Thank you. It's great to be here. So they asked me to talk a bit about bringing down the wall of capital. And I remember as an entrepreneur sitting, I wasn't quite as good looking as this guy, but sitting in my kitchen, starting companies, not being well dressed, looking like every entrepreneur here. And actually, just by show of hands, how many people here are an entrepreneur? So I can get a sense. Awesome. So we start things because we love them. And we start things because we don't work well in big companies, and because we don't look good in suits, and because we don't fit in often to the corporate structure. And entrepreneurs often don't understand this process of capital. And I remember the first time I was out trying to raise money, and I met with all these people in suits and didn't really understand what they were looking for. And many of them were not entrepreneurs. And I'm just trying to get to the finish line, right? As an entrepreneur, my goal is just to get from here to there. And unfortunately, doing that often requires burning a lot of money, sometimes too much money. And I don't have a lot of money, right? So I'm out there going to coffee shop meetings, going to offices, asking friends for money. And you end up meeting all sorts of people when you do that. Unfortunately, you meet the bankers. And they like to burn money, but not the sort of money we like as entrepreneurs, right? They lost a lot of money, in housing and investing in other companies. But when you go to a bank here, Deutsche Bank is not going to give you a loan for your startup. Like, that's not how it works, right? You're not credible enough. You didn't go to the right school. You weren't born from the right family. None of us were. Almost no entrepreneur is. I think the drive that makes people want to do what we do, doesn't come often from people who have had a good life and things are easy. So I tried talking to the bankers, and that doesn't work. And then you talk to the VCs. And the VCs wear a T-shirt because they want to be cool, but they still have a suit over it. So you sort of like them. I mean, they're sort of cool. They're trying to be cool. Often they'll hire young people who are super cool to sort of help them be cooler. And some VCs, have actually run companies. Like I was meeting with a couple partners on Monday who have actually operated companies and understand what we do. And so I always like talking to the investors who actually understand what it's like to be alone doing something, what it's like to have a small team where if one person leaves, you're completely screwed, right? The sort of stress that you go through when you're doing this sort of work. And some of them, unfortunately, are more the finance types, and they just want to look at the numbers, and they don't really understand what we do. And so I've been on a bit of a crusade working with these AngelList guys to try to turn more entrepreneurs into investors. And the reason is because I want to be able to talk to and fundraise from people I like and people who understand what we do. So I'm here to talk about bringing down the wall between capital and entrepreneurship. And funny enough, I was not here when the wall fell down, but I actually went to a communist school in Prague back in '79 for a year. And so I've seen what the other side, what it looks like, and how amazing it is when you're able to break down these walls and have people come over to the other side. So how is it going? Well, it turns out crowdfunding is really working. And as you can see here, crowdfunding has actually passed angels as a group in terms of dollars deployed in startups. It is not quite past VC yet, but if you look at the line, you can see that the trend is very clear. We, the people in this room, are going to be putting more money to work in startups than venture capital soon. And you know that if you look in the industry, because you can see it's not just true in venture capital. Really, it's true in every type of capital. Donations are now being crowdsourced. Loans are now being crowdsourced. Equity is being crowdsourced. Royalties are being crowdsourced. Everything you can think of that used to go through a bank, that used to go through some person in a suit that made judgments about whether or not you were worthy will now go through people like us. And there are all sorts of companies doing this. So, as they mentioned, I'm an investor in Indiegogo. And so Indiegogo started with helping artists to make movies and to make CDs for music. Not that anyone knows what a CD is anymore. But you it was the same thing that an entrepreneur in technology goes through. Like, you want to make this movie, but you need 50,000 euros or 100,000 euros for production budget, and no bank is going to give you that money. But people who are passionate about what you're passionate about will. And so Indiegogo started with movies, and then moved to music, and then art, and now technology. And we actually invested in a smart suitcase that went on Indiegogo and raised $2 million in sales before they built the suitcase. And so now they're running to China to try to actually build the suitcase that I bought. Kickstarter also very similarly started with gadgets and has sort of moved more broadly. And so everything you could think of that is a product now shows up here, but even services. And I was talking to Slava, the CEO of Indiegogo, a few months ago, and he was telling me very proudly about the first crowdsourced baby. And I sort of looked at him funny, like I do many entrepreneurs, and I said, I don't understand. How many people are involved in a baby? I'm pretty sure it's 2. Sometimes you can do it with 1, but I'm pretty sure you can't do it with 10. And he goes, no. No, this woman needed $8,000 to pay for the injections to have in vitro fertilization. She and her husband were having problems having a baby, and they needed this process in order to have a baby. And so she crowdfunded the money to have a baby. And I was like, so did the person who donated the most get to decide the name of the baby? Just like, the name of the stadium here is named by Allianz because they gave the most money. Is that how it works? And he's like, no. Okay, but still, like, people are doing crazy things with this sort of crowdfunding. And then there's other sorts of crowdfunding that looks, a little more boring. So I can get a loan now from Lending Club or Prosper. You can get a loan that is really from a group of people, and you can tell a story about yourself and why you are a good and trustworthy person. And again, I compare this to the day of going into the bank and trying to get a loan for my business, and it is really a much better process. It's much cheaper, it's much faster, you get better rates, and everyone involved actually does better, right? I get a higher interest rate when I lend money, and I get a lower interest rate when I borrow money than I would if I went through the bank as the middleman. And really, that's what most of these things are about. Most platforms doing this sort of work are really trying to take out all the fat, that the bankers get paid, and replace it with more value for the customer on either side. And that's really what AngelList is doing as well. So AngelList, which launched about 18 months ago, launched this thing called syndicates. And the idea was that we could come together as a group behind one person who looks at a company and decides this is a good company, and that one person then can allocate capital without all the infrastructure that venture capitalists have, without the fancy offices, and without all of the infrastructure that comes with being a VC. And so about 18 months ago, Naval, the AngelList founder, came to me and a bunch of angels who look like me and said, hey, you should try this thing. And I was like, I'm busy. And he explains to me, no, you will be able to, like, Gil, instead of writing a 25,000 euro check, now you'll be able to write like 100 or 200,000 euro check because all of your friends can come together. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I'll try it. So I went out and I did, sort of my first crowdfunding, and it looks like this, right? The syndicate manager is this sort of like super angel. Not because they have a lot of money, not because they're some like awesome person, but just because people trust their judgment. And they say, Gil, I trust you. I think you do a good job of picking companies, and I would like to put a little bit of money behind you. And so this crowd, over on the left here, often 100 people, sometimes more, will come in with small checks as little as, I think, 900 euros and as much as, hundreds of thousands of euros into each deal. And it is a deal-specific thing. So you can actually look at each company as they come through and decide, I like this one, I don't like this one. I like this one, I don't like this one. And so we started doing this, and we've now done 50 or so deals. We've started launching more and more syndicates, because a syndicate is really just a way for a super angel to sort of collect all of the money. And so I've been going around to conferences like this and saying, you should join our team and become one of the investment managers if you know something about startups, if you've been involved in startups, if you want to be one of those people who helps decide where the money goes, let me help you to replace the VCs with someone who actually understands this business. And so we actually launched a brand, we called it Flight, and we pretend we're a VC, so we added .vc at the end. Actually, we really did that because flight.com was too expensive. And so, it was the best of a bad series of domain names to choose from. But the goal with Flight is to help entrepreneurs like us take flight and have a chance to do this sort of thing. So you become a super angel, you go out and you find these crazy people who are doing these mad science projects, and you're able to give them a much larger check now. And for the entrepreneur, it's really an existing behavior. I don't know how many of you have been out raising money, but I remember going out to raise money and going from coffee shop to coffee shop, and everyone says it's very interesting, and they'll think about it, and then they hear one cool person is investing. Oh, Felix is investing. Okay, great, I'm in now. And they all run in behind Felix. And so this syndicate is just automating an existing behavior. And if you think about some of the best consumer internet services out there, that's what they do. They take an existing human behavior and they make it better, faster, cheaper, right? LinkedIn automated the existing behavior of working through your friends to find a job or to get an introduction. Facebook automated the behavior of stalking the cute girl in school. I mean, that's really what it was at the beginning, and Twitter is really automating the human behavior of talking about the things that you care about to your friends who don't care. Like, here's what I ate for breakfast, and here's this cool picture of me you don't care about. And AngelList is really doing the same thing, this behavior of people following someone who is smart, who has connections, who has experience, and who can put the money into interesting companies. So that's sort of what we're doing. And if you think about what's changed to make all of this happen, the automation of documents and the automation of money transfer has reduced an enormous amount of friction that allows us to put money into something very efficiently, where before you would sign all this paperwork. I was doing, both in France and Germany, the amount of paperwork to do an investment is amazing. You guys kill more trees documenting deals than I've ever seen. So the ability to do it all online, do it with one click, and off you go is really a remarkable reduction in cost. And then the data transparency, right? If I loan every one of you in the room here money, it's hard for me to figure out who of you are going to pay it back. But with Lending Club or Prosper or the equivalents here, I can see a credit score on you, I can get your reputation, I can get all this data that helps me decide who to lend money to and who not to. Much lower cost structure and much less regulation, right? When the Landesbanks here go under, we pay for it. When the banks in the US went under, I paid for it. When Lending Club goes bankrupt, God forbid, we don't pay for it. If a loan on Lending Club doesn't get paid back, we, the citizens of the government, do not pay for it. And so that less protection means less regulation. Less regulation means you can do things faster and cheaper also. And finally, there's just 2 billion people online, and so you can get small amounts of checks and they add up to a large amount of money. My favorite other Indiegogo story being the guy who put up a post saying, my goal is to make my favorite type of macaroni and cheese. And will you please donate some money so I can make my favorite macaroni and cheese for me? And if you donate more than $1, I will provide you the recipe for my favorite macaroni and cheese. And he raised $8,000, which is completely ridiculous. Right? But no one gave more than $1. So for no one person was this really hard, but there are so many people that he ends up with $8,000 to go make macaroni and cheese, and I want to see the photo of the macaroni and cheese bowl that he's able to make with $8,000. So, fundamentally just a much more efficient sort of way to make capital. And so I'm really here trying to break down this wall, and I wanted to have a chance to announce something. We're trying to do this now in Germany. And so I was looking for who is the first smart guy I trust, who has a good network, who has a good reputation, and can help us decide, what are the best startups to find in Germany? Where can I find this guy? And funny enough, I found him right here. So if I can get this to work, I want to introduce you to the German Unicorns Fund, which Felix Haas and I will be running together. And to give you a sense of how fast and efficient this is, We set this up about a week ago and just sent out some notes to friends of mine and other people I know in Germany. And the syndicate already has about 250,000 euros per deal committed from people like us. And I think after this talk, it'll be probably more like €1 million because I can already see some people going to AngelList to look for it. And our goal is to do a few deals here and to just sort of build this tempo of entrepreneurs investing in entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs deciding who gets capital. And so I just want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to have launched this. I'm sorry Felix couldn't be here for it, but I think he's backstage making sure this all works. And I'm really excited to try to break down the barriers between capital and jobs and entrepreneurship here in Germany. So thank you all for listening.
Gil, it's been a pleasure here.